Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Alliterations. Today, we're going to be discussing a little bit uh, about a classic piece of British literature, a classic movie, and how they're almost two different, completely different things, and that is Mary Poppins. Uh, so I never read Mary Poppins before. Of course, I'd seen the movie, uh, but it's been 12, 15 years since I've last seen the movie. And so, when I say that I'm not going to say I remember every detail of the movie, I don't remember anything in the movie that was even vaguely familiar from that book, except the names, pretty much. And the very last scene of the book is replicated fairly accurately, fairly faithfully in the movie. Beyond that, these two works are totally different. Now P.L. Travers wrote half a dozen more um, Mary Poppins books, including a cookbook, evidently. Uh, so maybe the movie is more closely adapted from one of those. That I can't say. Uh, and I also don't think I'm going to be reading any of those sequels. Uh, Maybe if I had kids or something like that, kids to read to, I would. But as of right now, I don't foresee myself doing it because uh, this book, Mary Poppins, was certainly not on my top 10 favorite children's books. Uh, Largely, nothing happens, uh, and that's really a shame. It's about two kids in particular, the Banks children, Jane and Michael, and they have younger siblings, a set of twins, but they don't. Their names are said and they show up once in a while. They don't really do anything. And Jane and Michael are like 8, 9 or so. Uh, Elementary school kids, and they just walk around the town with Mary Poppins every I forget what it was, but something like every the third Thursday of the month or something like that, which seems like kind of random. And that's about what happens. They just walk around. They go visit people, the butcher, and some duke or somebody like that, baron or whoever who floats. Uh, and that's about it. That's about what happens. Now, what is really interesting is that the movie is a much more magical place. Mary Poppins performs magic. Magic maybe is quite the right word, but you know that idea. If you're familiar with the movie, you know what I'm talking about. In this book, there's like there's two instances of magic. One where they visit that duke or whoever he is, and he floats. And then at the very end of the book, when Mary Poppins floats off into the sky. Uh, with no further anything happening. Um, and then there's also another character who appears right at the end of the book, and the best way to describe her is she's a fairy, but maybe she's not. It's left very ambiguous. But she just literally appears for like 10 pages and then she disappears. And has no real impact on the plot. And because I think largely because there really isn't a plot, or at least not a discernible one, there's nothing happens in the book. So the best way I can think of this is that if you've seen my video or if you've read the book, The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, uh, it has that. While that one is not necessarily for children, obviously, it has it's I wouldn't say it's totally appropriate for children, but I would read it to an 9 or 10 year old. Like Mary Poppins probably would. You probably read it to younger people, Mary Poppins too. But anyways, um, it's that same idea. It's this. There's a baroness, uh, you know, uh, tutor, a babysitter who comes in and is posh, but not quite as posh as she thinks of herself, and makes an impact on these children's lives, but also doesn't. And I think that's really interesting, and that's a theme. Those two works are 30 years apart. This was published in 1936, I think, Mary Poppins, and then Primus Jean Brodie was published about 30 years later in the earlier mid 60s. And I think it's the only really discernible takeaway I can get from Mary Poppins is that, or one or two, I should say, is that there's the theme, like I say, of not really, the people we think are going to have an impact on our lives don't necessarily, but the people we don't necessarily think are going to have an impact on our lives have the largest impact on our lives. This book, despite the fact that nothing really happens, and despite the fact that Mary Poppins doesn't really do anything to these children, Jane and Michael, they're going to remember Mary Poppins far more than they're going to remember their parents, because Mary Poppins is, just flamboyant and out there and vivacious and all that sort of stuff. And it's just kind of the same thing with Jean Brodie and all the children she teaches in that book. And then the other thing I can take away from this book is that sometimes the adaptations that we see and are familiar with are nothing like the source material. And while I'm usually one for trying to keep things faithful to source material, in this case, I'm very much okay with it, because I'm very much okay with the idea of changing it completely, because the movie is much more entertaining, much more interesting, much more impactful than 200 pages of walking around Britain to visit butchers and then not doing anything else. That's really what Mary Poppins the book is like. It's 200 pages of just walking around, then going back to the house, and then walking around some more with a rather annoying babysitter and two even more annoying children. So, for one side, I'm not going to say I really recommend reading this book. And it doesn't happen very often. Like every other book I've reviewed on here or talked about, I've recommended reading. This one, I think, if you wanted to skip it, I think that would be okay. So, I know it's a little bit of a shorter video. There's not much to say. So, I'm going to move on, and thank you all for stopping by, and hope you enjoy it, and looking forward to the next video. Please like and subscribe, share this video if you can, and talk to you all soon. Take care.